Elijah Carter wiped salt spray from his weathered hands, invisible to the wealthy yacht owners who treated marina workers like furniture. But today would change everything. When arrogant millionaire Preston Locke's prized vessel developed a mysterious leak that baffled his expensive engineers, he mockingly challenged the quiet black dockhand to fix it, promising his yacht as reward while guests recorded his theatrical taunt. What Preston couldn't know was that beneath Elijah's unassuming exterior lay 8 years of classified naval engineering experience in some of the most dangerous waters on Earth. As Elijah calmly accepted the challenge and disappeared below deck, neither man realized this simple repair would expose a web of international crime, upend a corrupt empire, and transform a community forever. Within minutes, the leak would be fixed. But Preston's casual cruelty had unknowingly set in motion the unraveling of everything he'd built by a man society had taught him never to truly see. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The sun glinted off the polished surface of luxury yachts lined up at Harborview Marina. Music and laughter drifted across the water from the largest vessel in the bay. The Larkspur, where champagne flowed freely among the well-dressed guests of Preston Lock. Their voices carried over the water, mixing with the gentle lap of waves. Against the docks, away from the festivities, workers moved silently, collecting discarded napkins that had blown onto the dock and polishing brass fixtures. They were as invisible to the party-goers as the seagulls circling overhead. Among them was Elijah Carter, a black man in his early 30s with strong hands and watchful eyes. He worked methodically, wiping down the hull of a neighboring boat with careful attention to detail. His movements were efficient, the product of years spent maintaining machinery far more complex than these pleasure crafts. A navy blue cap sat low on his brow, shielding his eyes from both sun and scrutiny. Preston Locke stepped to the edge of his yacht, champagne flute in hand, and called to someone over his shoulder. "Darling, come look at our little marina family down there," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the workers. "The background extras that make our paradise possible." Laughter rippled through his audience. A blonde woman in a white sundress appeared at his side, barely glancing at the workers before turning back to the party. Elijah didn't look up. He simply continued his work, moving his cloth in smooth, practiced circles. His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly, the only sign he'd heard the comment, "Did you hear about Locke's yacht troubles?" A voice murmured nearby. Elijah's hands paused briefly. James, another dock hand, had approached and was pretending to help while actually taking a break. "What troubles?" Elijah asked quietly, resuming his work. James leaned closer. "The Larkspur's been leaking for weeks. Even the fancy engineers Locke flew in from Miami couldn't figure it out. She's taking on water slowly, but surely." Elijah nodded but said nothing. His eyes, however, drifted toward the Larkspur's hull. Where it met the water, he noticed a subtle discoloration on the dock beneath, water stains that shouldn't be there, forming a pattern that told a story to those who knew how to read it. "It's worse than they're saying," Elijah murmured, almost to himself. "What's that?" James asked. Before Elijah could respond, a commotion erupted on the Larkspur. A crew member was speaking urgently to Preston, whose face had darkened with annoyance. "What do you mean the bilge pumps are working overtime?" Preston's voice carried across the water. "I paid those engineers a fortune." Elijah shook his head slightly and returned to his work. This wasn't his problem. He had 3 more boats to clean before his shift ended, and then he'd head home to the small house he shared with his grandfather. An hour later, as the sun began its descent, Elijah was coiling a hose when he overheard 2 of Preston's crew members talking nearby. "We'll have to cancel next week's cruise if we can't fix it," one said. "Mr. Locke will have our heads." Elijah hesitated, then approached them. "Excuse me," he said. "I noticed the watermarks under your stern. Have you checked the auxiliary coolant line? Sometimes it can crack where it connects to the—" One of the crewmen snorted. "Thanks, buddy, but we've had real marine engineers look at it. No offense, But we don't need cleaning staff giving us maintenance advice. The other laughed. Yeah, next you'll be offering to perform brain surgery. Elijah nodded once, his expression unchanged. Just trying to help, he said, and walked away. As evening fell, the party on the Larkspur grew louder. Lights strung along the deck reflected on the dark water, creating the illusion of stars below matching those beginning to appear above. Elijah had finished his shift but lingered at the edge of the marina, watching as Preston Locke held court among his guests. It's just a small leak, Preston was saying loudly, waving his hand dismissively. Nothing to worry about. Once we figure out which pipe is the problem, it'll be a quick fix. A burly man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit laughed. Can't your staff figure it out? What do you pay them for? Preston snorted. They're good for cleaning and serving drinks. For actual problems, you need experts. His eyes drifted to where Elijah stood at the edge of the dock. Like our friend down there, watching us. I'm sure he thinks he could fix it with duct tape and a prayer. The guests turned to look at Elijah, who remained still, his face impassive. Well, come on up. Dock hand, Preston called, beckoning with his champagne glass. Don't be shy. You've been eyeing my boat all day. Reluctantly, Elijah approached the gangplank. He didn't step aboard, but stood at the edge, hands in the pockets of his work pants. You got something to say about my yacht? Preston asked, his voice thick with mockery. No, sir, Elijah replied evenly, but you are looking at it like you know something we don't. Preston's words slurred slightly. Maybe you think you can fix what my $50,000 engineers couldn't. Someone in the crowd snickered. Elijah remained silent, his eyes steady. What's your name, anyway? Preston demanded. Elijah. Carter. Well, Carter, Preston said, raising his voice for the benefit of his audience. If you're so smart, stop the damn leak and I'll give you the yacht. He gestured grandly at the Larkspur, and laughter erupted around him. Silence fell as Elijah considered the man before him. Then, quietly, he said, All right. He wiped his hands on his pants, climbed the gangplank, and headed toward the cabin door that led below deck. Preston blinked in surprise, then burst into fresh laughter. Look at that, he's actually going to try. He turned to his guests. This should be entertaining. As Elijah disappeared below deck, a memory surfaced. He was back on a Navy destroyer during a storm in the South China Sea. Water was pouring through a fractured pipe in the engine room, threatening to short out critical systems. His commanding officer was shouting orders as Elijah calmly identified the problem and implemented a temporary fix that held until they reached port. Now, in the dimly lit bowels of the Larkspur, Elijah made his way to the bilge. The smell of diesel and seawater filled his nostrils as he examined the yacht's systems. It didn't take long to find the issue: a hairline fracture in the auxiliary coolant line, just as he'd suspected, cleverly hidden behind a panel that the other engineers hadn't thought to remove. From the small tool pouch he always carried, Elijah retrieved a specialized marine epoxy compound and a small application tool. With practiced hands, he prepared the surface, applied the compound, and reinforced it. The entire process took less than 20 minutes. When he finished, he reached over and reset the bilge pump. The steady, rhythmic sound of water being pumped out changed pitch, then slowed as the pump finally caught up with the leak and then stopped entirely as it cleared the remaining water. Above deck, the sudden silence of the bilge pump caught everyone's attention. The mechanical hum that had been a constant background noise ceased, leaving only the sound of waves against the hull. Preston, mid-anecdote, faltered. His eyes darted to the yacht's control panel, where a warning light had just gone dark. Elijah emerged from below deck, wiping his hands on a rag. He said nothing, just looked at Preston with calm eyes. The laughter that had filled the deck earlier was gone. Well, double quotes, Preston said, a nervous chuckle escaping him. I didn't mean it literally. Of course, Elijah replied quietly. A young woman in the crowd held up her phone. I got it. All on video, she said, grinning. That was actually pretty cool. Elijah nodded to Preston, then turned and walked down the gangplank. As he reached the dock, he heard footsteps behind him. "Hey," called a crew member, hurrying after him. "What did you do down there?" "Fix the leak," Elijah said simply, and continued walking. The marina fell quiet behind him as he made his way through the darkness toward the bus stop. He didn't look back at the larkspur, now silent and solid in the water the way a good boat should be docked by the next morning. The video had made its way around the marina's social circles. Elijah arrived at work to find James waiting for him, practically bouncing with excitement. "Dude, you're all over the internet." James thrust his phone into Elijah's hands. "Look, #Larkspur leak is trending in the local feeds." On the screen, Elijah watched himself calmly accepting Preston's challenge, disappearing below deck, and emerging victorious while Preston stammered his retraction. The video had several thousand views, not viral by national standards, but certainly making waves in the boating community. "It's nothing," Elijah said, handing the phone back. "Just did what needed doing." "Nothing. You made Preston look like a fool." James laughed, "And he promised you his yacht." Elijah shook his head. He was drunk. "It was a joke. Not according to Lena," James replied, nodding toward the marina office. Lena Thompson approached them, clipboard in hand, in her late 20s, with her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She balanced her job as the marina's administrative assistant with night classes in paralegal studies. "Morning, celebrity," she said to Elijah with a grin. "Got a minute?" They walked together along the dock, morning sun warming the air around them, so that video ... double quotes. Lena began. "I know. It'll blow over. Maybe not." She stopped walking and faced him. "Elijah, that was a verbal contract, caught on camera with multiple witnesses. In my legal ethics class last semester, we studied cases like this. He made a clear offer, you accepted, and you performed the requested service." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "You're saying he legally has to give me his yacht?" "I'm saying you might have a case." Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Think about it, a millionaire's arrogance finally catching up to him. It would be justice." Elijah shook his head. "I've got enough to handle without a legal battle against someone like Preston Locke." "Just consider it," Lena said, squeezing his arm before heading back to the office. Throughout the morning, Elijah received curious glances and congratulatory nods from the other dock hands. By noon, word had spread that Preston Locke had arrived at the marina, and he didn't look happy. Preston strode down the dock in tailored slacks and a crisp button-down, sunglasses hiding his eyes. He spotted Elijah working on a sailboat and approached. "Carter," he called, voice tight with controlled anger. "A word." Elijah climbed down from the sailboat and stood facing Preston, arms at his sides. "That little stunt yesterday," Preston began, keeping his voice low. "Cute, very cute, but let's be clear, it was a joke." Everyone there knew it was a joke. "Okay," Elijah said simply. Preston seemed thrown by the lack of argument. "Good, I'm glad we understand each other." He straightened his already straight collar. "I appreciate you fixing whatever was wrong with my yacht. Send an invoice to my office for your time." "No need," Elijah replied. "I was on the clock for the marina." Preston studied him, clearly trying to figure out if there was an angle he was missing. "Well, good." Then he turned to go, then paused. "You know, you're wasted here washing boats. My company has positions for people with technical skills. Send me your resume. I'm good where I am." "Thanks." Preston's jaw tightened. "Have it your way." He walked away, phone already at his ear. Later, that afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up to the marina. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and practical clothes stepped out, surveying the docks with practiced attention. She approached the marina office, showed identification to Lena, and asked a few questions before making her way to where Elijah was working. "Mr. Carter," she asked, "I'm Detective Reese Morgan. Could I have a moment of your time?" Elijah wiped his hands on a rag. What's this about? Nothing to worrying about, she assured him, just following up on some information that's come across my desk. I understand you recently serviced Preston Locke's yacht. Fixed a leak, Elijah confirmed. That's all. Detective Reese nodded thoughtfully. Mind telling me exactly what you did on the yacht? Where you went, what you saw, went to the bilge, found a cracked coolant line, patched it. Elijah studied her. Why do you care about a routine repair? Let's just say Mr. Locke's activities have attracted some attention. She handed him a card. If you remember anything unusual about the yacht compartments, documents, anything that seemed out of place, I'd appreciate a call. After she left, Elijah turned the card over in his hands, wondering what Preston Locke might be involved in that would interest a detective. That evening, as Elijah was finishing his shift, a man in an expensive suit approached. He had the polished look of someone who worked in an executive office rather than on the docks. Mr. Carter. The man extended his hand. Thomas Wells, Mr. Locke's personal assistant. Do you have a moment? Elijah nodded, wiping his hands before shaking the offered hand. Mr. Locke appreciates your discretion about yesterday's misunderstanding. Wells produced an envelope. He'd like to offer you a token of his gratitude. $20,000. No strings attached. Elijah looked at the envelope but didn't take it. For fixing a leak. For your silence regarding the incident and the subsequent social media attention, Wells clarified. Mr. Locke would prefer this situation not escalate further. He's worried about the video. Mr. Locke is a businessman with important connections. Such undignified exposure can have consequences beyond what you might imagine. Elijah considered the envelope, then shook his head. No thanks. Wells blinked in surprise. Perhaps you misunderstood. This is $20,000. I understood. Elijah turned back to his work. But I don't need his money. Wells stood there a moment longer. Mr. Carter, it would be unwise to make an enemy of Preston Locke. Elijah didn't respond, and eventually, Wells walked away, the envelope disappearing back into his jacket. When Elijah arrived home that evening, his grandfather was sitting on the porch of their modest house, reading the newspaper. Ben Carter, in his 70s with a crown of silver hair, looked up as Elijah climbed the steps. There's my famous grandson, Ben said with a smile. The marina called. Said you fixed some rich man's boat. Elijah sat beside him with a tired sigh. Word travels fast, always does when it's worth hearing. Ben folded his newspaper. They also said he offered you a bribe. To keep quiet about something, not a bribe. A token of gratitude, Ben chuckled. Same thing, different wrapping. He studied his grandson. You turned it down. It wasn't a question, but Elijah nodded anyway. Your mother would be proud, Ben said softly. She always said justice starts small, with one person refusing to play by broken rules. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, casting long shadows across their small yard. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking the city, Preston Locke paced back and forth, phone to his ear. What do you mean he refused the money? He demanded. Everyone has a price. He listened to Wells's explanation, face growing darker. Well, find something on him, Preston snapped. Everyone has secrets. Dig into his background, his family, whatever it takes. This needs to go away. He hung up and walked to the window, staring out at the distant lights of the marina where his yacht was docked. The Larkspur represented more than just a luxury. It was his mobile office, his escape route, and most importantly, his secure storage for documents that could never see the light of day. The next morning, Lena cornered Elijah during his break. I checked the public records on the Larkspur, she said without preamble. Something's weird. Weird how? Elijah asked, accepting the coffee she offered. It hasn't been legally docked here in weeks. The registration shows it should be in international waters right now. She lowered her voice. And get this, the official owner isn't even Preston Locke. It's registered to a shell company called Oceanic Ventures. Elijah frowned. Why would he pretend to own a yacht that isn't his? Tax evasion. Maybe. Or ... double quotes. Lena hesitated. Remember, that detective asking questions. Before she could continue, a shadow fell across them. A man Elijah didn't recognize stood there tall, broad-shouldered, with cold eyes. Carter, the man asked. Elijah nodded. Friendly advice, the man said, voice low and even. Stop poking around rich people's toys. It won't end well for you. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away. Lena's eyes widened. Who was that? No idea, Elijah replied, watching the man disappear around the corner. That afternoon, Elijah received a call from a local podcast host who ran a show about maritime topics and local harbor news. Mr. Carter, the host said enthusiastically, we'd love to have you on Dockside Chat to discuss your experience with the Larkspur. Our listeners are fascinated by the story. Elijah's first instinct was to decline, but then he thought of the mysterious detective, the ownership discrepancy, and the man who had threatened him. All right, he agreed. One interview, the podcast recording took place that evening at a small studio overlooking the harbor. The host, Jackie Williams, welcomed Elijah warmly. So, tell us what happened on the Larkspur. She began once they were recording. Elijah spoke simply and honestly, describing the leak, his solution, and Preston's challenge. He didn't mention Detective Reese, the bribe, or the threats, just the facts as they had occurred. What made you so sure you could fix it when professional engineers have failed? Jackie asked. I served as an engineer in the Navy for 8 years, Elijah explained. Worked on everything from destroyers to submarines. When you're underwater and something breaks, you learn to diagnose problems quickly, and now you're a dock hand. It's honest work, Elijah said without defensiveness. I like being near the water, fixing things when they break. By the time the interview concluded, Jackie was beaming. That was great, she told him off-air. Our listeners will love your story. The quiet expert who showed up, the arrogant yacht owner. As Elijah left the studio, his phone buzzed with a message from Lena. Interview was perfect. You're trending again. People are saying Preston should honor the deal. Elijah slipped his phone back into his pocket and gazed out at the marina, where the Larkspur's lights glowed in the darkness. Something told him this was just the beginning, that the ripples from his simple act of fixing a leak were spreading further than he could imagine. In the harbor office, Detective Reese sat alone, reviewing files on her laptop. On her screen was a map showing the Larkspur's movements over the past year, a pattern that matched perfectly with a series of offshore banking transactions she had been tracking. She clicked on a photo of Preston Locke, then one of Elijah Carter. What did you really see down there, Mr. Carter? She murmured to herself, and in his penthouse, Preston Locke watched the interview streaming on his tablet, his face contorted with rage. He hurled the device across the room, shattering it against the wall. Find everything there is to know about Elijah Carter, he snarled into his phone. Everything. The moon hung low over the marina, casting silver light across the gentle waves. The figures moved silently along the dock toward the Larkspur, their footsteps barely audible above the lapping water. Elijah led the way with Lena close behind, both dressed in dark clothes. Are you sure about this? Lena whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. This feels a lot like breaking and entering. Can't break into a place you've been invited to fix, Elijah replied quietly. He held up a small work order form. Marina manager asked me to double-check the patch job after hours. Apparently, Preston's been complaining about strange noises. Lena raised an eyebrow. Convenient. Truth is often convenient. Elijah flashed a small smile. But we're not just checking the patch. They reached the Larkspur, its polished hull gleaming in the moonlight. Elijah boarded first, offering Lena his hand as she followed. Once aboard, they moved with careful precision toward the cabin door. Security system, Lena asked. Disabled for maintenance. Elijah pressed his finger to his lips as they descended. Below deck, The interior of the yacht was all luxury plush carpets, wood paneling, and chrome fixtures. They passed through the main cabin with its leather couches and fully stocked bar, then descended further into the vessel's heart. In the engine room, Elijah moved directly to the bilge area where he'd fixed the leak days before. He ran his hand along the wall beside it, feeling carefully. "What are you looking for?" Lena asked. "When I was fixing the pipe, I noticed something odd." His fingers traced the edge of a panel. The bulkhead measurements didn't match the yacht specs. "There's extra space behind here." "How would you know the yacht specs?" Elijah gave her a look. "I looked them up after the detective came asking questions." His fingers found what they were searching for, a nearly invisible seam. He pressed firmly in two places, and with a soft click, a panel swung open, revealing a small, sealed compartment built into the hull. "Bingo," he whispered. Inside was a waterproof case about the size of a briefcase. Elijah carefully removed it and set it on the floor between them. The case had a combination lock. "Any ideas?" he asked. Lena thought for a moment. "Try his birthday." "April 15th. How do you know his birthday?" "Marina paperwork. We send all the boat owners' birthday cards." Elijah dialed 0 Nothing happened. "Current year," Lena suggested. He tried 0 Still nothing. "Wait," Lena said suddenly. "The yacht's named the Larkspur. Isn't that a flower that blooms in July?" Elijah tried 0 to 7. The lock clicked open. Inside the case, they found stacks of documents, bundles of foreign currency, and several flash drives neatly organized in protective sleeves. Lena picked up one of the documents, her eyes widening as she scanned it. "These are offshore account numbers," she whispered. "Panama, Cayman Islands, Switzerland." Elijah examined another paper. "This looks like a shipping manifest, but the cargo descriptions are in code." They spent 20 minutes carefully photographing everything with their phones, making sure to return each item exactly as they found it. Elijah was about to close the case when something caught his eye: a small notebook tucked in a side pocket. He flipped through it, finding page after page of dates, locations, and initials. "We need to show this to Detective Reese," he said, photographing each page. As they closed the compartment and made their way back to the deck, Lena grabbed Elijah's arm. "Listen," she whispered. Footsteps sounded on the dock nearby. They ducked behind a lifeboat just as a flashlight beam swept across the yacht. A night security guard passed by, making his rounds. They waited until he was gone before slipping off the yacht and heading back along the dock, moving casually now as if they were just evening strollers enjoying the marina. "What do we do with this?" Lena asked once they were safely away, gesturing to their phones. "First thing tomorrow, I'm taking it to Detective Reese," Elijah replied. "This is bigger than a verbal contract or a yacht challenge now." The following morning, Elijah met Detective Reese at a quiet cafe several blocks from the marina. He slid his phone across the table to her, the photos from the hidden compartment displayed on the screen. "Where did you get these?" she asked, her expression serious as she scrolled through the images. "The Larkspur has a hidden compartment near the bilge." All of this was inside. Reese studied the photos carefully, her face growing more intense with each swipe. "Mr. Carter, do you know what you've stumbled into? I'm guessing it's not just tax evasion. This connects Preston Locke to a shell company in Panama that we've been investigating for months." She lowered her voice. "It's part of an international money laundering operation. The transactions, the shipping routes, it all fits." "So, what happens now?" "Now, I build my case." She handed his phone back. "And you stay away from Preston Locke and his yacht. These people are dangerous." Elijah hesitated. "If these photos help your case, I want something in return. I don't make deals, Mr. Carter, not a deal. A promise." Elijah met her gaze. "When this is over, I want the truth about the Larkspur made public. All of it." Reese studied him for a long moment. "Justice, not revenge." "Justice," Elijah confirmed. "I can work with that." She stood to leave. "Stay safe, Mr. Carter, and thank you." As Elijah returned to the marina, his phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Preston knows. His assistant was just here asking if anyone had been on the yacht last night." Elijah quickened his pace, a sense of unease settling over him. He'd known there would be consequences, but how quickly they were coming surprised even him. That evening, when Elijah arrived home, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The front door was slightly ajar, and the usual sounds of his grandfather's radio were absent. "Grandpa," he called, pushing the door open carefully. The living room had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, cushions slashed, books thrown from shelves. Heart pounding, Elijah rushed through the house. "Ben, Grandpa?" He found his grandfather in the kitchen, sitting calmly at the table with a cup of tea. "I'm fine," Ben said before Elijah could speak. "They waited until I went to the store. Came home to find this mess." Elijah embraced the older man, relief washing over him. "Did you call the police and tell them what?" "That someone tossed our place, but didn't take the TV or my wallet." Ben shook his head. "This wasn't a regular burglary, son." In the bedroom, Elijah found his old Navy medals scattered across the floor, the shadow box that had displayed them, smashed. He knelt to gather them, anger rising in his chest. "They're sending a message," Ben said from the doorway. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Elijah could answer, his phone rang. It was Lena. "Elijah, we need to talk," she said, her voice tight with worrying. "Can we meet?" 20 minutes later, they sat on a park bench overlooking the harbor. The Larkspur's lights were visible in the distance. "This is getting dangerous," Lena said. "That, detective, the break-in at your place, it's escalating fast." "I know. Maybe we should back off. Let the authorities handle it." She touched his arm. "I'm scared, Elijah, for you. For your grandfather." Elijah stared at the yacht in the distance. "If I don't stand up to this, who will?" He turned to her. "My grandfather always taught me that injustice thrives when good people look away." "I can't look away, Lena. You could get hurt," she insisted. "Or worse. So could a lot of other people, if whatever Preston's involved in continues." Elijah's voice was soft but determined. "I've made my choice." The next morning, Preston Locke held an impromptu press conference on the deck of the Larkspur. News cameras and reporters gathered as he stood confidently before them. "I've called you here today to address some troubling developments," Preston began, his expression grave. "A former maintenance worker at this marina has been attempting to blackmail me, claiming I promised him ownership of my yacht." Murmurs spread through the gathered crowd. "Elijah Carter is not only a thief trying to steal my property through manipulation of a joke taken out of context, but he has now broken into my vessel in an attempt to fabricate evidence against me." Preston's voice hardened. "I've filed criminal charges and a restraining order. The leak he supposedly fixed never even existed. It was a minor adjustment that my crew had already scheduled." From the edge of the dock, Elijah watched silently, hands in his pockets. Several other dock hands stood nearby, their expressions varying from skepticism to confusion. As the press conference concluded, reporters approached Elijah for comment. He simply shook his head and returned to work, aware that his reputation now hung in the balance. By afternoon, the marina was buzzing with gossip. Some people defended Elijah, pointing to his years of quiet reliability and expertise. Others sided with Preston, seeing only a dock hand trying to take advantage of a wealthy man's careless words. "Don't let it get to you," James told Elijah as they worked side by side. "People with money stick together. Doesn't make them right." Later that day, as Elijah was finishing his shift, Detective Reese called. "I've been digging deeper into Preston's activities," she said without preamble. "The evidence you provided connects him to a much larger operation. His yacht movements perfectly align with international banking transfers to known shell companies. Is it enough to arrest him?" "Not yet. We need more concrete proof of intent. But we're getting close." She paused. How are you holding up? My grandfather's house was broken into. Nothing taken, but the message was clear. I can arrange protection. No, Elijah cut in. That would just confirm I'm working with you. We'll be careful. That weekend, the marina held its annual barbecue, a community gathering for boat owners, workers, and their families. Despite the tension of recent days, Elijah attended, bringing his grandfather along. As they arrived, conversations paused briefly before resuming. Some people nodded in greeting, others looked away. Elijah moved through the crowd with his usual quiet dignity, helping to set up tables and chairs. A group of children playing nearby recognized him from local news coverage. One small boy approached hesitantly. Are you the man who fixed the big boat? He asked. Elijah nodded, smiling. That's me. My dad says you're gonna own it soon, the boy continued. He says you'll be Captain Carter. More children gathered around, asking questions about boats and engines and how things worked. Soon, Elijah was sitting on a bench surrounded by kids, explaining how propellers push water to make boats move forward. Across the gathering, Detective Reese watched the scene, a small smile playing at her lips. She made a note in her phone before slipping away unnoticed. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon as morning broke over the marina. The Weather Service had issued a tropical storm warning for the coast, predicting high winds and dangerous waves. Within the next 24 hours, boat owners scrambled to secure their vessels, adding extra lines and removing loose items from decks. In his penthouse, Preston locked pace anxiously, phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean they're closing in? He demanded. I thought you had this contained. The voice on the other end spoke urgently, causing Preston's face to pale. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky and the marina in the distance, where the Larkspur was docked. How much time do we have? He asked, then nodded grimly at the answer. Prepare the yacht. We leave tonight, at the marina. Elijah helped secure boats against the coming storm. The wind was already picking up, whipping spray from the tops of waves. Most vessels were being double moored or moved to safer locations. The Larkspur's crew is getting her ready, James called to Elijah over the wind. Looks like they're battening down for a rough one. Elijah glanced toward Preston's yacht, noticing unusual activity. Rather than securing it more thoroughly, the crew seemed to be preparing it for departure, checking fuel lines and running engine tests. That doesn't look right, he muttered. As darkness fell and the storm intensified, Elijah remained at the marina, helping with last-minute preparations. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, reducing visibility to just a few yards. Most people had left, seeking shelter from the worsening weather. From the window of the marina office, Elijah noticed lights moving on the Larkspur. He grabbed a rain slicker and headed out into the storm, making his way carefully along the slippery dock. Through the curtain of rain, he saw the Larkspur's engine start, a low rumble beneath the howl of the wind. The mooring lines were being cast off. They're leaving, he realized with shock. In this weather. He rushed back to the office and grabbed his phone, dialing Detective Reese's number. When she answered, he had to shout to be heard above the storm. The Larkspur is leaving the marina right now. What? Reese's voice crackled through the connection. In this storm, Preston must be running, Elijah said. You need to stop him. I can't, she replied, frustration evident in her voice. The warrant isn't finalized. We need proof of intent to flee, not just suspicion. By the time you get that, he'll be in international waters. The line went silent for a moment. Mr. Carter, Reese said finally, don't do anything foolish. This is a job for authorities. Elijah ended the call and stared out at the Larkspur, its running lights now visible through the rain as it slowly moved away from the dock. He made his decision in an instant. The marina kept several small rescue boats for emergencies. Elijah unlocked the boathouse and quickly prepared one, checking the fuel and starting the engine. He knew it was dangerous, possibly suicidal too, take such a small craft out in these conditions, but he couldn't let Preston escape. The little boat bounced violently as Elijah guided it out of the harbor and into the open water. Rain lashed at his face, and waves crashed over the bow. But he kept his eyes fixed on the Larkspur's lights ahead. His years in the Navy had taught him how to handle rough seas, though these conditions tested even his experience. The yacht was moving slowly, struggling against the storm. Elijah gradually closed the distance, positioning his boat alongside the Larkspur's stern. When a particularly large wave lifted his small craft, he leapt, catching the yacht's ladder and pulling himself aboard. Soaked and breathing hard, Elijah made his way along the deck, keeping low to avoid being seen through the windows. Inside the main cabin, he could see Preston pacing anxiously while two crew members worked at the navigation controls. Elijah found an unlocked door and slipped inside, water pooling around his feet as he moved silently through the yacht's interior. He headed directly for the hidden compartment, hoping to secure the evidence before confronting Preston. When he reached the engine room, however, he found it empty, the secret panel open, and the waterproof case gone. Preston had already retrieved his insurance. A voice behind him made Elijah freeze, looking for something. He turned to find Preston standing in the doorway, a wrench gripped tightly in his hand. Gone was the polished businessman. This Preston was disheveled, eyes wild with panic and rage. "It's over, Preston," Elijah said calmly. "Detective Reese knows everything." "Knows what?" Preston stepped closer, raising the wrench. "That you've been harassing me, breaking into my yacht, trying to blackmail me. The offshore accounts, the money laundering. Whatever you're running through that hidden compartment." Preston's laugh was harsh. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, do you? This is bigger than you can imagine, big enough to run from in the middle of a tropical storm." "I'm not running," Preston snarled. "I'm protecting what's mine. Do you know what happens to people who interfere with operations like this? They disappear." The yacht lurched violently as a massive wave struck its side. Both men stumbled, grabbing for support. "You're insane," Elijah said. "This storm will tear this yacht apart if you try to reach open water. Turn back, and face what? Prison, disgrace." Preston's face contorted with fury. "You did this. You ruined everything when you came aboard my yacht. A nobody, a dock hand, thinking you could challenge me. I just fixed a leak," Elijah said quietly. "You're the one who made it more." With a roar of anger, Preston lunged forward, swinging the wrench. Elijah dodged, but the yacht pitched again, throwing him off balance. The wrench grazed his shoulder, sending a shock of pain down his arm. Elijah recovered quickly, years of Navy training taking over. He blocked Preston's next swing and pushed him back, not wanting to fight but determined to defend himself. "Listen to me," Elijah shouted over the storm's noise. "This yacht won't make it. We need to turn back. You don't give the orders here." Preston swung again, wilder this time. As they struggled, the yacht heaved violently. Preston lost his footing and fell backward toward the railing. In an instant, Elijah saw what would happen. Preston would go overboard in this storm, with no chance of survival. Despite everything, Elijah lunged forward, grabbing Preston's shirt and yanking him away from the rail. The momentum sent them both crashing to the deck. Preston's head struck a cleat, and he went limp. Elijah checked his pulse, still strong. He'd only been knocked unconscious. Dragging Preston to a more secure position, Elijah tied him to a fixed chair using rope from a nearby locker. Then he made his way to the bridge, where the two crew members were struggling to control the yacht in the worsening conditions. "We need to turn back," Elijah told them firmly. "This vessel won't make it to open water." "Mr. Locke's orders," one began. "Mr. Locke is unconscious," Elijah cut in. "And I'm the only one here with naval storm experience. Turn this yacht around, or we all go down." The crew members exchanged glances, then nodded. They began the difficult process of turning the yacht back toward the harbor. As they struggled against the storm, a spotlight suddenly cut through the darkness and rain. The distinctive sound of helicopter rotors became audible above the wind. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "This is the Coast Guard," heaved to and prepared to be boarded. Relief washed over Elijah as the helicopter hovered closer. Through the rain, he could make out Detective Reese in the open door of the aircraft, alongside Coast Guard personnel. The storm began to subside as they approached the harbor, the worst of it passing out to sea. By the time they docked, police and Coast Guard officers were waiting. Detective Reese strode purposefully down the pier as Elijah disembarked, Preston locked secured between two officers. That, Reese said, looking at Elijah's soaked, battered form, was incredibly stupid and dangerous. Did you get the warrant? Elijah asked, just in time. Your call about him fleeing was the final piece we needed. She nodded toward Preston. We found the case. It's all their account numbers, transfer records, everything we need to connect him to the entire operation. Preston, now fully conscious, glared at Elijah as he was led away. This isn't over, he spat. Actually, Reese replied, it is. She turned to Elijah. You took a huge risk tonight. Seemed like the right thing to do. Reese shook her head, but there was reluctant admiration in her eyes. The doll will want your statement tomorrow. For now, go home, get dry, and maybe rethink your career choices. The Coast Guard could use someone with your determination. As Preston was placed in a police car, Elijah looked back at the Larkspur, now safely moored at the dock. In the early morning light, as the storm clouds dispersed, the yacht seemed smaller somehow, less imposing. Elijah turned to Detective Reese. So about that deed. She laughed, shaking her head. One thing at a time, Mr. Carter. One thing at a time. The dawn broke fully, casting golden light across the marina. Workers and early risers began to emerge, surveying the storm's damage. When they saw Elijah standing there, soaking wet but victorious, a spontaneous cheer broke out. James approached, slapping him on the back. Captain Carter, you crazy son of a gun. As word spread of the night's events, more people gathered. Lena pushed through the crowd and, without hesitation, threw her arms around Elijah. Don't you ever do something that's stupid again, she whispered fiercely. He smiled tiredly. No promises. The Larkspur stood silent behind them, its secrets finally exposed, its owner facing justice. What had begun as a simple challenge on a sunny afternoon had ended in a storm-tossed confrontation that would change everything for Preston Locke, for the marina community, and for Elijah Carter, the dockhand who had refused to look away. Dawn broke over Harborview Marina, bathing the docks in soft golden light. Elijah Carter stood motionless on the weathered planks, his clothes still damp from the night's ordeal. Dark circles shadowed his eyes as he watched a team of officers methodically boarding the Larkspur. Despite his exhaustion, he remained rooted to the spot, unwilling to leave until he witnessed the final moments of Preston Locke's downfall. News vans had already begun arriving, reporters and camera operators hustling to set up equipment. Several recognized Elijah from previous coverage and called out questions, but he simply shook his head. Maintaining his characteristic silence, Detective Reese emerged from a police cruiser and made her way toward him. Navigating around puddles left by the storm, her normally pristine appearance showed signs of the long night. Her hair slightly disheveled, her blazer wrinkled from the helicopter ride. You look like you could use about 15 hours of sleep, she said, handing him a coffee in a paper cup. Elijah accepted it gratefully. Any chance that's going to happen? Not today. She nodded toward the Larkspur. Preston is in custody facing multiple charges: money laundering, tax fraud, obstruction of justice. The evidence we found in that compartment is just the beginning. Once we start tracing the accounts, we expect to uncover connections to larger operations. What happens to the yacht? Reese took a sip of her own coffee. That's where things get interesting. Normally, it would be seized as evidence, possibly auctioned off later. But your situation complicates matters. Before she could elaborate, they were interrupted by the arrival of Lena, who rushed down the dock and threw her arms around Elijah. You idiot, she murmured against his shoulder. Chasing a yacht in a storm. What were you thinking? That Preston was getting away. Elijah replied simply. Lena pulled back, her expression caught between exasperation and admiration. She turned to Detective Reese. What happens now? Now, Reese said, Mr. Carter gives his official statement, gets some rest, and prepares for what's likely to be a media circus. By midday, the marina had transformed into a hub of activity. Police officers and federal agents moved purposefully between the Larkspur and their vehicles. News crews competed for the best angles, while curious onlookers gathered at the perimeter established by yellow police tape. Elijah had given his statement and returned to his grandfather's house to shower and change. When he walked back into the living room, he found Ben watching the news coverage with intense focus. You're all over the TV, Ben said, gesturing to the screen where footage showed Elijah standing on the dock earlier that morning. They're calling you a hero. Elijah sat heavily beside his grandfather. I'm not sure hero is the right word. No. Ben turned to study his grandson. You exposed a criminal, stood your ground when threatened, and risked your life to bring him to justice. Sounds like a hero to me. Before Elijah could respond, his phone rang. It was Lena. You need to get back here, she said without preamble. Detective Reese wants to talk to you. And there's something else, that video of Preston's challenge. It's gone viral. Not just local anymore, national. When Elijah arrived back at the marina, he found Detective Reese in conversation with a man in an expensive suit whose demeanor screamed attorney. They both looked up as he approached. Mr. Carter, Reese said, this is District Attorney William Hayes. He's handling Preston Locke's case. Hayes shook Elijah's hand firmly. Impressive work, Mr. Carter. Not many people would have the courage to do what you did. Just trying to do the right thing, Elijah replied. Well, the right thing has put us in an interesting legal position. Hayes gestured toward the Larkspur. That verbal agreement caught on camera, we're reviewing it as potentially binding. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Seriously, I thought that was just leverage to get Preston nervous. Under normal circumstances, it might just be dismissed as a joke, Hayes explained. But given that Preston attempted to flee jurisdiction immediately after being confronted, it strengthens the case that he believed the agreement was valid. Otherwise, why run? Additionally, he offered you money to forget about the deal, which suggests he recognized some level of obligation. Elijah glanced at Reese, who nodded confirmation. This isn't just theoretical, she said. The state is considering it. Later that afternoon, Lena found Elijah at the marina office, reviewing documents spread across a desk. What's all this? She asked. The Larkspur's registration history. Elijah pushed a paper toward her. Look at this. Lena examined it closely, her eyes widening. These signatures don't match. The ownership transfer from 3 years ago, it's forged. Preston never actually owned the yacht, Elijah confirmed. It was registered to Oceanic Ventures, but even that transfer appears to be fraudulent. The original owner's signature was forged. This makes the gift even more legally valid, Lena said excitedly. If Preston had no legitimate claim to defend, in the first place, he can't contest the transfer to you. As they pieced together the yacht's complicated history, a breaking news alert flashed on the office television. The anchor's voice filled the room. In a shocking development in the Preston Locke scandal, his estranged wife, Vanessa Locke, has given an exclusive interview addressing the controversial yacht challenge. The screen cut to an elegant blonde woman sitting in a well-appointed living room, her posture perfect despite her obvious discomfort with the spotlight. I left Preston 2 years ago after discovering his illegal activities, Vanessa said calmly. I've been cooperating with authorities since then, but remain silent publicly for my own safety. Regarding the yacht, the Larkspur was purchased with funds that I now know were illegally obtained. In my opinion, Mr. Carter absolutely deserves the yacht after what Preston put him through. It would be the one honest transaction in the yacht's history. Lena turned to Elijah, eyes wide. Did you know about this? He shook his head. Never met the woman. This changes everything, Lena said. With Preston's wife supporting your claim, public opinion firmly on your side, and the legal technicalities around the yacht's registration, you might actually end up owning the Larkspur. Back at his grandfather's house that evening, Elijah found Ben watching more coverage of the unfolding scandal. The older man muted the television as Elijah entered. "How are you holding up?" Ben asked, still processing. Elijah sank into his favorite chair. "It's all happening so fast." Ben studied his grandson. "Your mother would be proud. You know, standing up for what's right, not backing down when things got tough." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I always told her you had something special in you. Something that couldn't be taught." "I remember," Elijah said softly. "You told me the same thing after she passed. Said I had her backbone and her heart." Ben reached for the remote, but paused before turning the volume back up. "Whatever happens with that fancy boat, son, remember who you are. That's what matters in the end." 3 days later, Detective Reese and Lena arrived at the marina where Elijah was working. They carried a leather folder containing official-looking documents. "It's done," Reese announced. "The state has determined that the verbal contract, combined with your performance of the requested service, constitutes a conditional gift that Preston is legally obligated to honor." Additionally, Lena added, since Preston had no legal claim to the yacht due to the fraudulent registration, the state has cleared the title and is prepared to transfer ownership directly to you. She handed Elijah the folder. Inside were transfer papers, a new registration in his name, and official documentation declaring him the rightful owner of the Larkspur. "Congratulations, Captain Carter," Reese said with a small smile. "You're now the owner of a multi-million-dollar yacht." Elijah stared at the papers in disbelief. Despite everything that had happened, some part of him had never truly believed this moment would come. "There's just one thing," Reese added. "The yacht is still part of an ongoing investigation. We've processed all the evidence we need, but it can't leave the marina without notification for at least 60 days. "I understand," Elijah said, still looking at the documents. "Thank you, both of you." After they left, Elijah stood alone on the dock, staring at the Larkspur, his yacht now. Police tape still cordoned off the area, but he was permitted to board. Slowly, he walked up the gangplank, feeling the slight give of the boat beneath his feet. This time, he didn't head below deck or to the engine room. Instead, he walked to the bridge, running his fingers lightly over the polished wheel. The reality of his situation began to sink in as he stood there, a former dockhand now in possession of one of the most expensive vessels in the marina. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the deck, Elijah made a complete circuit of the yacht, assessing it with new eyes. No longer was he examining it as a worker looking for problems to fix. Now he was seeing it as an owner, noting the craftsmanship, the design, the potential. But as he reached the stern, he noticed something that hadn't been apparent during the chaos of the storm: significant structural damage along the port side. The yacht had taken a beating during Preston's attempted escape, and the repair work would be extensive. Standing there in the fading light, Elijah faced his first decision as the yacht's owner: rebuild it, or let it go. The morning sun glinted off the tools spread across Elijah's workbench. He'd set up a temporary workshop on the dock beside the Larkspur, gathering equipment he'd need for the mammoth task ahead. Some were his own treasured tools, others borrowed from fellow marina workers who'd offered support. "You sure about this?" James asked, helping Elijah organize various wrenches and sockets. "You could sell it for parts and still walk away with enough to buy a house." Elijah shook his head. "It's not about the money." "What, then?" "Pride. Legacy," Elijah replied, testing the balance of a hammer. "This yacht represents something now to the marina, to the community. I can't just scrap it." The damage assessment had been sobering. Beyond the visible hull damage, the storm had compromised several internal systems. The electrical wiring needed extensive work, and the engine had suffered when Preston tried to push it to hard and rough conditions. Conservative estimates put repairs at nearly $100,000, not including labor. As Elijah studied the yacht's schematics, Lena approached carrying a stack of folders and a laptop. "If we're really doing this," she said, setting down her burden, "we need to talk business." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Business? A yacht like this isn't just a boat, it's an opportunity." She opened her laptop, revealing spreadsheets and business plans. "I've been running the numbers. With your expertise and a good business model, we could turn the Larkspur into a profitable venture. Charter tour, private events, corporate outings, Elijah asked, a small smile playing at his lips. "Partners," Lena said firmly, extending her hand. "I handle the business side, you handle the boat. 50-50. Elijah considered her offer for only a moment before shaking her hand. "Deal, good." Lena immediately launched into details. "I've already registered us an LLC. We'll need insurance, licensing for commercial operations, marketing materials. Whoa." Elijah laughed, holding up his hands, "one step at a time. First, we need a seaworthy vessel." Over the following weeks, the Larkspur's transformation began. Elijah worked tirelessly, stripping damaged sections down to the frame and rebuilding them stronger than before. What he couldn't handle alone, he tackled with help from fellow dock hands who volunteered their time after their shifts ended. Word of the project spread throughout the maritime community. One morning, Elijah arrived to find a man waiting by the yacht. He introduced himself as Marcus Wilson, an ex-Navy mechanic who'd served time for a bar fight gone wrong. "Heard you might need help with the engines," Marcus said, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "Been trying to find work since I got out. Nobody wants to hire a guy with a record." Elijah studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Start tomorrow, 7 a.m. As the repairs progressed, more people like Marcus appeared, skilled workers with troubled pasts or circumstances that made traditional employment difficult. There was Sarah, a brilliant electrician who'd lost her license due to addiction issues, but was now 3 years sober. Michael, an undocumented carpenter with an intuitive understanding of woodwork, and Andre, a former business executive who'd lost everything in a scandal but knew luxury yacht specifications better than anyone. Elijah hired them all, offering fair wages and no judgment. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he told Lena when she expressed concern about their unconventional crew. The boat got one. So should they. The marina's atmosphere began to shift. Some of the wealthy boat owners who had previously ignored Elijah now watched the activity around the Larkspur with undisguised interest. Others made their displeasure known more directly. "I didn't pay premium slip fees to dock next to a halfway house project," one owner complained loudly to the marina manager. "These people don't belong here." By the end of the month, 3 long-term clients had relocated their vessels to other marinas, citing changing atmosphere as their reason for leaving. The marina owner, Walter Griffin, approached Elijah with evident anxiety. "I appreciate what you're doing, Elijah, but I'm running a business here. Those 3 departures represent significant revenue." "I understand," Elijah replied calmly. "If you want us to leave No, Walter said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying. The Larkspur is welcome here. I just hope this situation stabilizes." Soon, it did stabilize, but not in the way Walter had anticipated. As news of the Larkspur's rebirth spread, new clients began inquiring about slips. These weren't the traditional yacht owners who had dominated the marina for years, but a diverse group of successful professionals, doctors, tech entrepreneurs, artists who appreciated the story behind Elijah's project and wanted to be part of the changing community. By midsummer, the marina had not only replaced the lost revenue, but increased it by 15%. Walter, now fully supportive, had taken to bragging about his marina's transformation story to anyone who would listen. The Larkspur itself was nearing completion. Under Elijah's guidance, the team had repaired the structural damage, replaced the electrical systems, rebuilt the engines, and refinished the interior with sustainable materials that maintain the yacht's luxury while reducing its environmental impact. Lena, meanwhile, had been building their business infrastructure. She'd secured necessary permits, established relationships with local tourism boards, and created a compelling brand identity centered around transformation and second chances. Advance bookings for their planned yacht tour were already filling up. Despite the fact that they hadn't officially launched, "We need to make a statement with our launch," Lena said during one of their planning meetings. "Something that captures what this yacht now represents." Elijah nodded thoughtfully. Ceremony. Something to honor everyone who helped make this possible. They set a date for the Larkspur's official relaunch exactly 3 months after the night of the storm, when Elijah had chased down Preston Locke. Invitations went out to everyone who had played a role in the journey. Detective Reese, District Attorney Hayes, the marina staff, their rehabilitation crew, and, of course, Ben Carter. The day of the launch dawned clear and bright. The Larkspur gleamed in the morning sun, its hull freshly painted a deep blue that caught the light like a sapphire. The deck had been adorned with flowers and ribbons, and a small podium stood at the bow. People began arriving early, mingling on the dock beside the yacht. Many brought small gifts, bottles of champagne, handcrafted items for the interior, good luck charms for safe voyaging. The atmosphere was festive but meaningful, a celebration not just of a boat but of a community that had formed around it. When it was time for the ceremony to begin, Elijah stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered faces. His crew stood proudly in matching navy shirts with the Larkspur embroidered over the heart. "I want to thank all of you for being here today," Elijah began. 3 months ago, this yacht represented something very different than it does now. It was a symbol of excess, of privilege without responsibility, of corners cut and rules bent. He paused, his gaze moving across the crowd. Today, it stands for something else. Second chances, honest work, community, the belief that our pasts don't define our futures. He gestured to his grandfather, who sat in a place of honor near the front. "I'd like to invite Ben Carter to say a few words." Ben rose slowly, making his way to the podium with dignity despite his aging frame. He surveyed the crowd with clear eyes that had seen nearly 8 decades of life. "This boat," he began, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested, "was once a symbol of arrogance. Now it sails with purpose." He placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. "My grandson didn't just fix a leak, he fixed a broken system," he showed. "US, that integrity still matters, that justice can prevail, and that one person standing firm can make a difference." Ben's words were met with applause and a few tear-filled eyes. As he returned to his seat, Lena stepped forward with a bottle of champagne. "It's tradition to christen a vessel before its maiden voyage," she announced. "But the Larkspur, in a new boat, it's a reborn one. So, instead, we're celebrating its new life and new purpose." She handed the bottle to Elijah, who broke it carefully. Against the whole to enthusiastic cheers. As the celebration continued, Elijah moved through the crowd, thanking people individually for their contributions. Detective Reese approached, looking more relaxed than he had ever seen her. "Quite a transformation," she remarked, nodding toward the yacht. "Both the boat and its owner, former dock hand to captain," Elijah acknowledged with a smile. "Still getting used to it. You wear it well." She glanced around at the diverse group celebrating together. "You've built something special here, and I don't just mean the yacht." After the ceremony, it was time for the Larkspur's first official voyage under Elijah's command. A select group boarded the core team that had worked on the refit: Lena, Ben, and a few others who had been instrumental in the journey. Elijah took his place at the helm, feeling the familiar vibration as the engines hummed to life. With practiced ease, he guided the yacht away from the dock, navigating the channel, out to open water. The day was perfect for sailing: clear skies, gentle waves, a light breeze that carried the scent of salt and possibility. From the bridge, Elijah could see his crew working efficiently, each person confident in their role. Lena stood nearby, checking off items on a clipboard while simultaneously entertaining a group of guests. As they reached deeper water, Elijah increased speed slightly, feeling the powerful engines respond to his touch. The Larkspur cut through the waves smoothly, its rebuilt hull performing better than the original design. From the dock, a crowd had gathered to watch their departure. Friends and marina workers waved enthusiastically as the yacht moved gracefully. Across the water, James cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Go get M, Captain Carter." Meanwhile, in a stark concrete room at the county jail, Preston Locke sat across from his attorney, watching footage of the Larkspur's launch ceremony on a small television. His face remained impassive, but his hands clenched into fists as the camera panned across his former yacht, now transformed. "They can't do this," he muttered. "That's my property." His lawyer sighed heavily. "Mr. Locke, I've explained this multiple times. Your assets have been frozen, pending the outcome of your trial, including everything once connected to the Larkspur. Even if you weren't facing these charges, the verbal contract would likely stand given the circumstances." Preston turned away from the screen, unable to watch anymore. Everything he had built was crumbling around him, and the yacht he had once flaunted as a symbol of his success now belonged to the very man who had exposed him. Back on the water, the Larkspur completed a wide circuit of the harbor before returning to the marina. Sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks as Elijah skillfully guided the yacht back to its slip. The first voyage had been flawless, a testament to the quality of work his team had put into the refit. As the engines quieted and the yacht settled against the dock, Elijah joined Lena at the stern. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight shimmer on the water. "Funny," Elijah said finally. "All I wanted was to patch a leak." Lena laughed softly. "And look where it got you." "Where it got us," he corrected. She nodded, her shoulder brushing against his as they continued to watch the sunset. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued, glasses clinking, conversations flowing, occasional bursts of laughter. The Larkspur had begun its new journey, not just as a vessel on water, but as the heart of a community. Ben approached, moving carefully along the deck with a glass of champagne in hand. "Not bad for a day's work," he said, joining them at the railing. "We've got a lot more work ahead," Elijah replied. "Bookings start next week. You'll handle it?" Ben said confidently. "You always do." As darkness fell, lights came on throughout. The yacht warm, welcoming glows from carefully placed fixtures that Elijah and his team had installed. The Larkspur shone like a beacon in the night, transformed from a symbol of excess and corruption into one of redemption and possibility. For Elijah Carter, the journey from dock hand to captain had been unexpected, challenging, and profound. He had fixed more than a leak. He had mended broken systems, created opportunities for those who needed them, and built a legacy that honored his mother's memory and his grandfather's wisdom. And it had all begun with an arrogant challenge from a man who never expected to be taken seriously. "Stop the damn leak and I'll give you the yacht." Sometimes, Elijah reflected as he looked out over the peaceful harbor, the smallest actions create the biggest waves. The Larkspur's success grew steadily through the summer months. Bookings for harbor tour and private events filled their calendar, and the yacht that had once been a symbol of Preston Locke's success was now known for its community-focused mission and the second chance crew that operated it. One evening in late August, as sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Elijah supervised the cleaning crew after a corporate charter. The clients had been generous with both payment and gratuities, leaving the team in high spirits as they restored the yacht to pristine condition. Elijah was checking inventory in the galley when Marcus called down from the deck. "Boss, there's someone here asking for you. Says it's important." Climbing to the main deck, Elijah found a well-dressed man in his 50s standing at the gangplank. Something about his demeanor, the careful way he scanned his surroundings, the intentional placement of his hands triggered Elijah's military instincts. "Mr. Carter," the man asked, extending his hand. Thomas Sinclair, I was hoping we could speak privately. Elijah hesitated before shaking the offered hand. What's this about? A matter related to the yacht's previous owner, Sinclair said quietly. Specifically, a compartment beneath the deck. Elijah's face revealed nothing, but his pulse quickened. The police already cleared everything. There's nothing left to find, Sinclair smiled thinly. We both know that's not entirely true. Before Elijah could respond, Sinclair handed him a business card with no company name, just a phone number. When you're ready to discuss this further, call me. He turned and walked away, disappearing among the evening crowds at the marina. Elijah studied the card before slipping it into his pocket. Later that night, he called Lena. We need to check something, he said without preamble. Tonight, after everyone's gone, 3 hours later, they met at the deserted marina. The Larkspur sat dark and quiet, gently rocking with the harbor's subtle movements. What's going on? Lena asked as they boarded. Your message sounded urgent. Elijah recounted his encounter with Sinclair as they moved below deck. He knew about the compartment, the one where Preston kept his documents, but the police cleaned that out months ago. Lena said, frowning, that's what bothers me. Either he doesn't know that, or there's something else. Lena finished. They made their way to the engine room, where Elijah had discovered the hidden compartment during his repair work. The panel remained in place, now empty and serving as additional storage for maintenance supplies. The visitor mentioned a compartment beneath the deck. Elijah mused, scanning the area. Not this one specifically. He began a methodical examination of the engine room, checking panels and measuring distances between bulkheads. Lena joined him, tapping on surfaces and listening for hollow spaces. After nearly an hour of searching, Lena slumped against a wall. Maybe there's nothing to find. Maybe he was fishing for information. Maybe, Elijah conceded, wiping sweat from his brow. He leaned against the main engine housing, his hand brushing against a seemingly ordinary maintenance panel. Something felt off. He tapped it lightly, then compared it to adjacent panels. This doesn't sound right. Using a specialized tool from his kit, Elijah carefully removed the panel. Behind it was the expected tangle of wires and connections, but also a small keypad nearly invisible against the dark background. Look at this, he whispered. Lena moved closer. A security system. For what? Elijah examined the area around the keypad, feeling along the edges of the compartment. His fingers detected a nearly imperceptible seam running along the floor. Help me move this equipment, he said, already shifting a portable generator. Together, they cleared the area, revealing what appeared to be an ordinary section of the engine room floor. But when Elijah pressed specific points in sequence, a hydraulic hiss broke the silence, and a section of flooring slid open. Lena gasped. How did you know? Naval training, Elijah explained. Some military vessels have similar security compartments. Below was a small, sealed space not much larger than a coffin, but deep enough to hold significant contents. Elijah reached down and retrieved a waterproof case similar to the one they'd found months earlier. Though smaller, they brought it to the galley table, where better lighting allowed a proper examination. The case had no visible lock, but its construction suggested serious security measures. Should we open it? Lena asked. Elijah hesitated. Last time we found evidence, people broke into my grandfather's house. This feels different, more dangerous. After careful consideration, they decided to open the case. Inside, they found an encrypted external hard drive, a briefcase containing various identification documents in different names, a burner phone, and several bundles of marked currencies from countries around the world. This goes beyond money laundering, Lena whispered, examining one of the passports. This is espionage or international crime. Whatever it is, it's bigger than Preston Locke, Elijah agreed. He must have been working for someone else. They documented everything with their phones before returning the items exactly as they found them. After securing the compartment, they left the yacht, Both shaken by their discovery, the following morning, Elijah contacted Detective Reese, who arrived at the marina within the hour. "Show me," she said simply after hearing his account. Back aboard the Larkspur, Elijah revealed the hidden compartment and its contents. Reese examined everything silently, her expression growing increasingly grave. "This complicates things," she finally said, straightening up. "What you found suggests Preston was a middleman for a much larger operation. These aren't just financial crimes anymore." "Who's Thomas Sinclair?" Elijah asked. Reese shook her head. "I don't know, but I'll find out. In the meantime, you need to be careful. If he approached you openly, others might approach less diplomatically. What should we do with this?" Lena gestured to the case. "Leave it for now," Reese advised. "If we remove it, whoever sent Sinclair will know you found it and reported it. That could put you in danger. Let me coordinate with federal agencies first." After Reese left, Lena paced the deck, visibly distressed. "We should turn everything over immediately," she argued. "Get it off the yacht, out of our hands, and then," what Elijah countered, "run, hide. This yacht is our livelihood now. We can't just abandon it because things got complicated." "Complicated?" Lena's voice rose. "Elijah, this isn't about a rich man's tantrum anymore. These people, whoever they are, they don't play by the rules. They make people disappear." Elijah stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "I understand you're scared. I am too. But we can't bury the truth for us to stay safe." Lena met his gaze, conflict evident in her eyes. "Your grandfather's house was one thing. This is different." "It is," he agreed. "Which is why we need to handle it right." Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Detective Reese, informing them that she had arranged federal protection for the yacht and was fast-tracking the investigation. For now, they should continue operations normally to avoid raising suspicion. 3 nights later, Elijah was awakened by an urgent call from Marcus. "Someone's trying to break into the yacht," he reported. 3 men in black, using professional equipment. Elijah called Reese immediately, then contacted every crew member who lived nearby. By the time he arrived at the marina, a tense standoff was underway. Marcus and 2 other crew members had positioned themselves strategically around the Larkspur, armed with flare guns, boat hooks, and makeshift weapons. The intruders, realizing they'd lost the element of surprise, attempted to flee but found themselves blocked by more crew members arriving from different directions. In the confusion, they managed to escape, but not before security cameras captured clear images of their faces. When Reese arrived with backup, she immediately enhanced security around the yacht and launched an investigation into the attempted break-in. The following day, media outlets picked up the story, with headlines describing the Larkspur as the cursed yacht of secrets and speculating about what valuable items might be hidden aboard. The unwanted attention created a new problem. Curious sightseers began visiting the marina specifically to see the mystery yacht, disrupting normal operations and creating security concerns. Unexpectedly, the marina community rallied around Elijah and his team. Neighboring boat owners organized a volunteer night watch, taking shifts to monitor the Larkspur and surrounding areas. What had begun as Elijah's personal journey had evolved into a community cause. Walter Griffin, the marina owner, approached Elijah one morning. "Whatever's happening with your yacht," he said, "we've got your back. This marina stands together." Elijah was touched by the support, but increasingly concerned about the growing risks. After consulting with Lena and Detective Reese, he made a difficult decision to confront Preston Locke directly. The county detention facility was stark and impersonal, designed to remind visitors they were entering a place of punishment. Elijah sat at a small table in the visitation room, waiting. When Preston entered, escorted by a guard, he looked markedly different from the polished businessman Elijah had first encountered. His designer clothes had been replaced by a standard issue jumpsuit, and his once confident demeanor showed cracks of desperation. Well, Preston said as he sat down, a ghost of his former smirk appearing. Captain Carter himself. To what do I owe the pleasure? Thomas Sinclair, Elijah replied simply. The name had an immediate effect. Preston's false bravado vanished, replaced by barely concealed fear. I don't know who that is, he said, but his voice betrayed him. We found the second compartment, Elijah continued calmly. Below the engine room, Preston's eyes darted to the guard, then back to Elijah. You have no idea what you're messing with, he whispered. These people ... they don't forgive mistakes. Who are they? Preston shook his head slightly. I can't. They'd kill me in here, before morning. Then you're already dead, Elijah said bluntly. Because they know we found it. They tried to break in 3 nights ago. Color drained from Preston's face. After a long silence, he leaned forward. I was just the courier, he said quietly. The yacht, it was perfect cover. Rich man's toy. Free to travel international waters without much scrutiny. Who are you working for? Preston hesitated, then whispered a name. Valen Cross. The name meant nothing to Elijah, but Preston's reaction told him everything he needed to know about the person's significance. I fixed your yacht, Elijah said, standing to leave. Now I'm fixing the mess you left in the world. As he turned to go, Preston called after him, they'll come for you, Carter. They always do. That evening, Reese shared the information sheet. Gathered. Valen Cross is a ghost name in intelligence circles, she explained. Believed to be the controller of a network that facilitates financial movements for various less than legal enterprises. High-level stuff that crosses international boundaries, and Preston was working for this person. As a courier, most likely, the yacht provided perfect cover for moving sensitive information and materials. Elijah absorbed this, his concern deepening. So what's the plan? We're building a case, but it's complicated by jurisdictional issues. In the meantime, we've increased surveillance around the marina and your home. After Reese left, Elijah sat alone on the Larkspur's deck, watching darkness settle over the harbor. The yacht that had once represented a simple challenge now placed him at the center of something far more dangerous than he'd ever anticipated. Morning light streamed through the windows of the small conference room where Elijah, Lena, and Detective Reese gathered with federal agents. After weeks of investigation and surveillance, they were ready to move forward. We've identified Sinclair, one agent reported, sliding a file across the table. Former intelligence operative, now working as a private contractor. His appearance at your yacht wasn't random, it was reconnaissance. And the men who tried to break in, Lena asked, professional extraction team. They weren't there to harm anyone, just to recover the contents of that hidden compartment. Elijah studied the surveillance photos. So what happens now? Reese exchanged glances with the lead agent before answering. We have two options. We can move the evidence quietly, process it through official channels, and hope to build a case over time, or ... Or, Elijah prompted, or we can make this public. Full transparency. Use the media attention already surrounding the Larkspur to our advantage. The second option carried significant risks, but after careful consideration, Elijah made his decision. Transparency, he said firmly. No more secrets. 2 days later, Reese organized a press conference aboard the Larkspur. News outlets from across the country gathered, drawn by the irresistible narrative of the dockhand who had claimed a millionaire's yacht and uncovered an international criminal operation in the process. As cameras rolled, Reese revealed the extent of their findings, carefully anonymizing certain details while making it clear that Preston Locke had been involved in activities far beyond simple tax evasion or money laundering. We are announcing today that our investigation has identified Valen Cross as a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation, Reese stated, her voice steady and authoritative. The name sent ripples through the assembled media and sparked immediate speculation online. Within hours, financial analysts and investigative journalists were connecting dots that law enforcement had been tracking for years. The public disclosure created shockwaves through certain circles of high society and politics. people with connections to cross began distancing themselves, while others suddenly found reasons to travel internationally. The following day, federal agents offered Elijah witness protection. Given the profile of this case and your central role in exposing it, we strongly recommend relocation and identity change, they advised. Elijah declined without hesitation. I'm not hiding, he said simply. Not again, the agent questioned. Elijah thought of his years after the Navy, keeping his head down, avoiding attention. Figure of speech, he replied. As autumn arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and shorter days, a personal challenge arose amid the ongoing investigation. Ben Carter's health, which had been gradually declining, took a sudden downturn. Elijah spent increasingly more time at his grandfather's bedside, leaving the Larkspur's operations in Lena's capable hands. One peaceful October morning, Elijah arrived to find Ben had passed away in his sleep. The strong hands that had guided him through childhood, that had taught him to fix engines and stand up for what was right, were now still. 3 days later, close friends and family gathered aboard the Larkspur for a private memorial service. At Ben's request, Elijah scattered his ashes from the bow of the yacht as it sailed into the harbor's center. You raised me right, Elijah whispered as the ashes merged with the wind and waves, becoming part of the ocean his grandfather had loved. In the weeks that followed, Elijah threw himself into work, finding solace in the routines of maintaining and operating the yacht. Lena remained constantly at his side, her support transitioning seamlessly between professional partnership and personal comfort. One evening, as they finished reviewing the monthly accounts in the yacht's main cabin, the professional boundaries that had defined their relationship began to shift. What had started as mutual respect had grown into something deeper, a connection forged through shared challenges and unwavering support. Lena's hand lingered over his as she passed him a document. Their eyes met, holding a gaze that acknowledged the changing nature of their relationship. Neither rushed the moment with words or actions, simply allowing the recognition to exist between them. As winter approached, bringing the yacht tour season to a close, Elijah gathered his crew for an important announcement. The Larkspur has had its most successful quarter yet, he began, pride evident in his voice. That success belongs to all of you. Which is why I've decided to make some changes to our business structure. He distributed folders containing legal documents. These are shares in Larkspur Charters LLC. As of today, each of you is a co-owner of this business. Stunned silence gave way to disbelieving questions and finally to celebration as the crew realized what Elijah had done. Each person who had helped rebuild the yacht, who had taken a chance on his vision, now held a stake in its future. No one sails alone, Elijah said simply when Marcus asked why he would give away part of his company. That same week, Elijah made another significant decision. Standing on the stern deck with Lena, he unveiled a new name painted on the transom, the Phoenix, a symbol of rebirth. He explained, not just for the yacht, but for everyone involved with it. Lena smiled, understanding the deeper meaning, including its captain, especially its captain. He acknowledged as winter gave way to spring. The legal proceedings against Preston Locke reached their conclusion. His trial, which had garnered national attention, ended with a 30-year sentence for financial crimes, conspiracy, and acting as an unregistered foreign agent. During the sentencing hearing, the judge made specific reference to the now famous video that had started everything. Mr. Locke, she said, your casual arrogance created the opportunity for justice to prevail. Your challenge, stop the leak and I'll give you the yacht, set in motion a chain of events that exposed crimes affecting national security. Preston showed no reaction as the sentence was read, his face a mask of resignation. His empire had crumbled, his reputation destroyed, his freedom forfeited because of a leak he couldn't fix and a man he had underestimated. The federal investigation into Valen Cross continued, with new evidence emerging as financial records were unsealed and witnesses came forward. The Phoenix and its crew maintained regular operations, though Elijah remained vigilant about security. On the 1-year anniversary of the night Elijah had fixed the leak, the Phoenix hosted a special harbor tour for local children and their families. As the yacht returned to the marina at sunset, the docks were lined with community members waving and cheering. Elijah stood at the helm, Lena beside him, guiding the vessel to its berth with practiced ease. The crew worked in perfect coordination, securing lines and assisting passengers as they disembarked. A small boy standing on the dock pointed excitedly. "Look, Mom, it's the Phoenix, and there's Captain Carter." Elijah smiled and waved, remembering his own childhood dreams of someday commanding a vessel. He'd taken a different path than expected: Navy service, years as a dock hand, and now this unexpected role as captain of a yacht he'd claimed through an act of simple competence. As the last passengers left and the crew began clean-up procedures, Elijah joined Lena at the bow, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. "Quite a year," she said, slipping her hand into his. "Quite a journey," he agreed. From humble dock hand to respected captain, from outcast to community leader, from the man who fixed a leak to the man who exposed corruption. Elijah Carter's path had been anything but straight, yet through it all, he had remained true to the values his grandfather had instilled in him: integrity, perseverance, and the courage to stand up for what was right. The Phoenix glowed with warm light as darkness settled over the harbor. Tomorrow would bring new passengers, new adventures, perhaps even new challenges. But for tonight, all was well. In the distance, a child's voice carried across the water: "Captain Carter, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." Elijah smiled and raised his hand in acknowledgement. The greatest legacy, he realized, wasn't the yacht or even the business he'd built. It was the example he'd set by simply doing what needed to be done when the moment called for it. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, the Phoenix stood as a beacon in the harbor, a symbol of transformation, second chances, and the remarkable power of one person's quiet strength to change the world around them. The rich man had scoffed, the dock hand had fixed the leak, and in that simple exchange, everything had changed, not just for them, but for an entire community that now sailed forward together, full sail into a brighter future. Have you ever considered what truly makes someone powerful? Wealth and status, or character and conviction? If this journey from dock hand to captain moved you, like and subscribe for more stories that challenge us to see beyond the surface.